да водим това заседание и да можем да вземем историческото решение за приемането на второто съвместно заседание на групата за парламентарен контрол и да може действително в София да се приемат тези процедурни правила, които не успяхме да приемем само преди 6 месеца, когато бяхме в Брюксел. Искам да благодаря сърдечно за голямата ангажираност лична и изключително позитивните послания, които идваха от страна на комисията Либе, от господин Клод Мораес и също така Диез Демера, който през цялото време участваше в дебатите, които водихме с всичките държави и членки, които имаха своите резерви преди 6 месеца. Държавите, които имаха съответните възражения за приемането на процедурните правила от октомври 2017 година бяха 9 на брой. И мога да ви кажа, че през всичките тези 6 месеца екипите, както на господин Мораес от комисията Либе, така също и на българския парламент, успяхме действително да постигнем този значим политически консенсус, за да можем вече да започнем и съответната работа, свързана с парламентарния контрол на Европол. Давам думата на Клод Мораес и още веднъж искам да му благодаря от името на целия български парламент за неговата всеотдайност в това, което успяхме да постигнем днес, защото без неговата лична ангажираност, неговият натрупан опит и разбира се търсенето на консенсус и в европейското измерение, нямаше как да го постигнем.
Mr. Svitanov, and I'm going to make just a brief statement, which, first of all, the first point to say thank you to the Bulgarian presidency, to Mr. Svitanov and to the team here. He mentions that it was a historic moment to have the scrutiny rules approved today. Why does he say this? Because it was very complex to have all the national parliaments represented here, national parliaments of the European Union, together with the European Parliament, all together to approve rules which will ensure that one of the European Union's now most successful agencies, Europol, is on a secure footing, is able to move forward with good scrutiny, a good scrutiny base. This is very important because Europol adds value to the fight against organised crime and many other activities which are critical for Bulgaria, for the Western Balkans, for the region, but for the European Union as a whole. So this is why he describes it this way, and this is exactly how I would describe it too. So this morning was very successful, and we wish to build on it. Other colleagues here will talk about it. For the current director of Europol, Rob Wainwright, it gives his organisation the ability now to go forward an effective and fair governance way. So this is the main point I would like to make today. And as a statement, again, I'd like to thank the Bulgarian presidency, government, Mr. Svitanov and the team here, I think, who have organised this in a very effective manner and allowed us to reach this goal.
Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to Commissioner King to talk to us on cybersecurity.
To be back here in Sofia today for this meeting of the Joint Parliamentary Scrutiny Group on Europol. It's an important meeting because it brings together the representatives of national parliaments together with the European Parliament and the Commission to underline again their support for Europol, as well as establish the way in which we are going to scrutinise Europol's work and help hold them to account. They are an absolutely central agency, as we have heard. The prime and first responsibility for dealing with these threats from serious and organised crime, terrorism and cyber is and remains with the Member States and Member States authorities. But there is more that we can and indeed should do collectively, working together as the European Union to help and support Member States in this fight. And our agencies are a key part of that work to support Member States, Europol being absolutely central to the work we're doing together to counter terrorism, cyber and serious organised crime. And under the leadership of Rob Wainwright, Europol has gone from strength to strength. They helped last year in over 400 different investigations following different sorts of incidents, particularly terrorist incidents, at the invitation of the member states. They work very closely with the platforms to crack down on terrorist content online. Europol's Cybercrime Centre, EC3, is now recognised internationally as a centre of expertise in the fight against cybercrime. Working very closely with a network of partners, Europol used the Terrorist Finance Tracking Programme to help fight terrorist financing. They use the policy cycle to coordinate key objectives in tackling organised crime, working very closely with national authorities. One example last year was a focus on tackling illicit firearm trafficking, which delivered practical results. Europol play a key role in helping to keep citizens all across the European Union safer against these threats. I salute the work they do, and the Commission will continue to support it.
Thank you, Mr. King. Allow me now to give the floor to Commissioner Maria Gabriel. She will talk about digitalization, and I'm sure she'll mention some of the key issues of the Western Balkans and our commitment to them.
Good afternoon. First of all, congratulations and thanks to the Bulgarian presidency for organizing this event. And I'd like to congratulate the national parliaments and the European Parliament for this historic moment. We are clearly showing that the national parliaments, the European Parliament, the European Commission and Europol, we want to strengthen Europol's capacity, and we want to highlight once again its major role in fighting such major challenges as organized crime and cyber attacks. And we'd like once again to place in the center citizens' security. Talking about digitalization and the new technologies, we have one thought in the European Commission: that citizens should feel as secure online as they would feel offline. And the key word here is cooperation, participation of all interested parties. We have a very fruitful cooperation with Europol, first and foremost on referrals, internet referral. I mean here sexual abuse against children, hate language. Europol takes an active part in the EU Internet Forum, and the results are impressive. Commissioner King also mentioned this joint activity in internet referral. By the end of 2017, we have assessed 42,066 pieces of content, and after that, over 80 platforms have been vetted. Congratulations for the good work. We continue working in the same spirit, the more so that only 2 weeks ago the European Commission came up with a recommendation to fight illicit content. And at the heart of this fight is this reinforced cooperation between the European bodies. In cybersecurity, we have excellent cooperation on different topics. We have an excellent cooperation with the EC3 platform. In the autumn, the European Commission came up with another legislative proposal for increasing the operational capacity, for more human and technical resources. And one of the priorities of the Bulgarian presidency is exactly this, and so far work has been very successful. There is informal cooperation between CERT and the EU. This is the unit in Brussels to respond to widespread attacks, and the directors of the units in CERT, in EC3, in the Commission, are constantly in direct contact to exchange information. We are also working towards a memorandum for operational cooperation between EC3 and ESA and the European Defence Agency. A few words on the Western Balkans, another of the Bulgarian presidency's priorities. This is also a priority of the European Commission. The strategy on the Western Balkans, published in February, for the first time includes a digital agenda, and cybersecurity features high on it. Cyber attacks know no borders, and one of the versions we're discussing is for the Western Balkan countries to be given observer status at ENISA. We will have an opportunity to discuss all this in May, again here in Sofia, because cooperation means not only cooperation between the member states, but also between the EU and the countries of the Western Balkans. We need excellent exchange of information. We need the technical capacity to work on prevention. And all this could not be achieved without cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gabriel. And of course, now we'll give the floor to Rob Wainwright. He'll talk about the programming for the period 2018-2020, and also about the reports that came out in the last few years. And here we have to mention that organized crime and terrorism are, of course, the focus of our attention, but now more and more cyber crime as well. And our strategic partnership with the US is key in this context. We see the contacts of Europol with the Middle East and North Africa, and of course the Western Balkans. They are, after all, part and parcel of Europe, and we know that this is the tactical orientation of Europol. If the member states are not active, if the priorities which fully comply with the Berlin process, and if we do not achieve our goals in this field, it means that there would be blank spots in Europe and they would be filled by our adversaries. Therefore, allow me to pay tribute to Rob Wainwright and everything he has done in Europol. Europol opened up to all potential partners in order to exchange information, in order to analyze the data that we have and provide recommendations on that. So this will help us make the European Union more secure from now on, and then use more analysis on potential threats. Thus, we would be able to plan our reaction in order to counteract. So, Rob, over to you now. This is probably one of your last appearances as a director of Europol. In May, you are going to leave this position, but everyone has been praising your work within Europol so that it became the focal point of the effort of the member states and other partners in order to plan our joint efforts in counteracting terrorism and cyber attacks.
Well, first of all, may I thank Mrs. Fatana for those very kind remarks. It has indeed been a privilege for me to have the responsibility of leading Europol over the last 9 years. I'm very happy to be here today to brief our parliamentary colleagues at the national and European level about the priorities of Europol in the coming period. And that is, of course, to provide the maximum level of operational support to our member states' authorities as they seek to contain what are more dangerous, more complex threats to our internal security, from terrorism, from cybercrime, from a whole range of organised crime activities. As Commissioner King said, Europol supported hundreds of high-level investigations last year, supporting the police authorities here in Bulgaria, where we've enjoyed excellent cooperation over many years, and indeed authorities right across the European Union and beyond, including the United States and the Western Balkans. Our priority also is to increase the level of information exchange so we can understand better how crime and terrorist threats are evolving across borders in the European Union, how the groups involved are using technology in a more enterprising way. For the first time last year, Europol passed the 1 million mark of the number of intelligence reports that were exchanged across its platform. And our priority also is to increase our capability, our engagement with partners, including outside the EU, but internally as well, to modernize our information system and our analysis systems, for example, to develop further our specialist centers on cybercrime, on internet referral, which Commissioners King and Gabriel talked about, and in other specialized areas, including financial crime. Now, our work is not possible without, firstly, the support of our law enforcement colleagues around Europe, and I pay tribute to the excellent work and the increased engagement that they're now having with Europol, which I think is now firmly at the center of the European security architecture. But also our work would not be possible without political support, that's clear, in terms of providing us with the necessary resources and, of course, the correct guidance in terms of our strategic priorities. I'd like to thank Commissioner King, Commissioner Gabriel and their colleagues in the European Commission, our political leaders in the Member States, and indeed those representatives of the National Parliament, not least Claude Moraes from the European Parliament, for the guidance they've given us and the consistent level of support, which has been a critical part of the story of Europol as it's grown in scale over the last 10 years. Part of that political support, of course, is in providing the right control and accountability arrangements for Europol. As we engage in a more substantial way, for example, in exchanging personal data, as we're engaged in delivering what Commissioner Gabriel says is putting citizen security at the heart of our agenda, these are very sensitive, very high priority topics. That puts on the shoulders of Europol, therefore, some serious responsibilities. And of course, internally, we seek to discharge those responsibilities to the best of our abilities. But it's not possible in a democracy without full parliamentary control and accountability. And that's why today is so important, because now we have established the right kind of mechanism that will bring the national parliaments, the European parliaments, closer together in providing effective scrutiny of Europol's activities. So I'd like to thank and indeed pay tribute, because it's been quite a task to reach this point, to the work of Claude Moraes and Svetlana Tsvetanov, because you've done some excellent work today, and it reflects very well on the institution that I'm leading. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is what we wanted to share with you. Now we have to go back to our meeting in order to continue our work. I am sure you may have questions. Unfortunately, our time is very limited. We only have time for 1 or 2 questions. Mr. Tsvetanov, a question to you. Are you going to discuss possible relations between the UK and Europol after Brexit? Would the UK still keep its database? And to Mr. Wainwright, Wainwright, you said that there were about 30,000 potential terrorists in Europe, if I understand correctly. Could you elaborate? I would just say that a report of Europol from about a month ago, there was a lot of data. About 800 citizens from the Western Balkans have been fighting for Islamic State. There are about 5,000 EU citizens who were foreign fighters on the side of the Islamic State, and they would now be trying to go back to their countries of origin and thus become a potential threat to the EU. And your question on the UK is indeed very topical nowadays. I also mentioned it when we discussed the multi-annual programming of Europol. I said that the UK is one of the most reliable security systems within the European Union and also one of the main providers of information within the systems of the EU. That is why your question is truly very important and very topical. This is going to be discussed in the months to come. I'm sure that the national parliaments, all politicians, the European Parliament will try to find a way not to lose a very important source of information, the experience, the expertise that the UK has. Therefore, I think that in all the off-the-record talks that may be taking place, we all understand the significance, the importance of the UK, the potential that the UK has, the capacity which is already integrated within the EU entities to be retained. After all, security stands above all in order to guarantee democracy and the rule of law in all the member states. You have the floor, sir.
Well, clearly the exact size of the terrorist or indeed radicalized community in Europe is difficult to measure with precision because of the way in which it operates in a fluid and very often a clandestine way. But the threat is certainly large. It's complex in terms of involving active foreign terrorist fighters who have gone to Syria and Iraq, and some of which have come back, some more of which might come back in the future. But an even greater number, even a greater body of radicalized people from within our societies in many European countries that are being monitored by the law enforcement and security authorities for being potentially engaged or supporting acts of terrorism. And if you were to calculate the estimates that not Europol is providing even, but the national estimates from the relevant authorities in France, in the United Kingdom, in Belgium, in Netherlands, in Germany, in a number of countries, then you quickly reach a number which is indeed at least 30,000, possibly more. Now, this is the widest possible community of those that may be involved also providing support. Of course, not all of them have the intention or capacity to engage in terrorism immediately. But it gives a measure of the size and the complexity of the challenge that law enforcement authorities are faced with every day. Why international cooperation between them is so important, which is part of the task that Europol has, and which is why the institutions of the European Parliament, the European Commission are also so important in making cooperation more effective in this regard. Thank
you.
Last question, Bulgarian News Agency to Commissioner King. Commissioner King, the Russian influence on the web, is it a threat to the security of the European Union? And should the Union support the UK in hardening its tone vis-à-vis Russia after the case with the Russian spy?
Well, as I've got the floor, I'm just going to say one word on Brexit. There are 3 people out of 5 on this platform who are from the UK, but it's not actually the job of any one of us today to represent the UK government. So I'm very glad that our chair spoke so clearly about his views on what the UK government has done on security to help all European partners. We're not talking yet about the the possible future relationship between the UK after Brexit and the remaining 27, because the European Council at the end of the week is going to be looking at whether the conditions are right to start those conversations about the future. But I hope those conversations start soon. There are a number of very important subjects to cover when it comes to talking about the future relationship. As my colleague Michel Barnier, who leads on the enlargement negotiations, has made clear, on the Brexit negotiations has made clear, one of the key subjects will be security and defence. And when we come to discuss that subject, whatever else is going on in the wider Brexit discussions, I hope that we will be able to find a way of keeping the closest possible cooperation on security issues into the future. Because the threats that we face, that Rob Wainwright has been describing today and that this meeting is discussing, are common threats that affect all of us. And whether it is fighting terrorism, cyber, or serious and organised crime, we are in a better position to try and deal with those threats when we stand together. So that, I hope, will be the frame of mind that informs the discussions on the future when they get going. On the question of Russia, I would simply note that the foreign ministers, the EU foreign ministers, are meeting today in Brussels, and they have issued a statement just a few hours ago saying that they are very concerned by the latest events that have taken place in the United Kingdom, in Salisbury, and that they will be following the developments very, very closely. I think it's going to be on the agenda again at the end of the week when the European Council meets. So we will see then the clear message that goes from the EU together to those who apparently are behind this horrid attack. More widely, we have a team in the Commission that follows propaganda and disinformation that is circulated across the European Union in the media of the member states. And that team has identified a lot of propaganda and disinformation that appears to be sourced from Russia. It's not the only source of disinformation and propaganda that affects all of our countries, but it is apparently behind some 3,500 different sets of stories and disinformation that have been identified by the Stratcom team in Brussels. When those stories and pieces of disinformation are identified, I think it's very important that they are called out so that people can take a critical look at such stories and pieces of disinformation and form their own views. And within the Commission and the European Action Service, we will continue to support that activity.
I'd like to thank our friends for this joint press conference. And since at the end of today's meeting, I will also thank all volunteers, all the teams responsible for organizing the logistics of the presidency. I know that their work is sometimes unnoticed, but it's crucial for the success of this event. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope that with what our guests said, the objective information could reach our readers, viewers, because we should not only look into the future, but also speak of what's happening today in Europe and what our challenges are. Thank you once again.
Indeed, this could be an Anglo-Hungarian